Hello everybody, we've missed you. Welcome to the group chat with Mr. McInally and Mr. Perry from Footy Accumulators and from Betfair. Al, we're going to start off talking about Manchester City. I wanted to say that for a long time. And I want your opinion, Al, on the defence, because I was at Stamford Bridge for the game against Chelsea and City were magnificent. I mean, I'm asking you with a loaded question already, but best performance of the season for City, best performance since when? I can't even remember.
Well, that is the main point, I think, there. When do we remember? We were so used to seeing City be so dominant in the first 25, half an hour, that if they hadn't scored, they were going to score, and they looked as if they were going to score, and that hasn't been the case. And you're right, defensively, they've been better. There's no question. We'll speak about Diaz. I'm almost sure you're going to throw that at me. But probably of this season, it has to be, certainly away from home, remember, their best performance of the season to put Chelsea away, considering a lot of people are expecting big things from the London club.
Yeah. Go on then. Let's talk about Reuben Diaz, because he's 23 years old. He's impressing everybody. And look, quite rightly, he should be impressing people because he cost £61.5 million from Benfica. That's a hell of a lot of money, especially for a 23-year-old. What do you think of him? From my point of view, I think that he does the simple stuff. He does the unfashionable defending, nothing fancy, happy to boot it into Rosette if needs be, and kind of goes under the radar. And that's what City have needed, really, to play alongside the more fancy centre-backs like Stones and Laporte.
Amazing, isn't it? A football player that does his job. Doesn't try and be a right-back, doesn't try and be a defensive midfield player, doesn't try and be a winger, take people on. Happy to get the ball off the defender, because that's what City like to do that. It doesn't take a lot of chances, Will. And if he needs to put it 50 yards, it goes 50 yards, and everybody comes back out and everybody gets back into shape. For 23 years old, and I'm hoping I'll take a bit of stick on Twitter about this from Man United fans probably. I would say Diaz is as good a signing that City have made defensively for the last 3 or 4 years, genuinely. I think he's been so good. And I think when he's in the team, I think their probably stats are pretty good and pretty high. But for 60 million for a 23-year-old to go into a team that's incidentally expected to go on and compete at the gut end of the Champions League as well, I think he's done absolutely brilliant. I mean, brilliant. And to be honest, right now, he gets in every single team. I know he's already in the Man City team, but when I'm thinking, is he that good? Would he get in a better team or another team or a top team? Yeah, I think he would. I think he's that good, genuinely. I think he's going to be at City for ages. I think Pep will be delighted the way he's playing.
Well, Liverpool would have him because they haven't got any fit centre-backs, have they, at the moment? Jordan Henderson has to play.
That's kind of the point, really. You know, Liverpool are champions at the moment. Would he get in the Liverpool team? Yeah, I do. If Van Dijk was fit, would he still get in the Liverpool team? Ooh. I think he can play alongside Van Dijk.
So he's getting ahead of Gomez for you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I think he's good. I think he's that good. Having said that, Gomez has done really well. Joe has done brilliant. And unfortunately for Joe, sometimes they've played him at fullback where I don't think he's happier. But I'm trying to make the point of, I think the 60 million nowadays for someone as good as a 23-year-old has been an absolute steal. I think it's been a wonderful buy for Manchester City.
And Al, they have spent an insane amount of money, Manchester City, on defenders, going all the way back to, a guy whose name you probably don't even remember, Eliakim Mangala, where they spent £45 million on him from Porto. You've obviously had all your players come in, your John Stones, your big money, and I know he's in the team now and keeping clean sheets, but it had to fix itself, that problem, at some stage, and it looks like City have got it spot on. You look at Diaz in particular, 10 clean sheets this season. He's played 18 games. City have only lost once with him in the team.
Oh, okay. I didn't realise that. I mean, that's a great start. I mean, genuinely, if you showed that to Pep Guardiola, he'd be like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm happy with that, obviously. See, you mentioned the player there that I want to do well. I don't know the lad. I think I met him once when he was at Everton. And you're going to tell me who he's signed for, and I can't even remember. Don't tell me. Barnsley.
Oh, sorry.
I nearly had it. I had Brentford in my head for some reason. I want him to do well. I genuinely do. I want him to be as good. Maybe not for England, but I want him to be as good as he possibly can, because I think the boy's taken a bit of stick. But when I've seen him, I think he's been really good. See, at times I've thought of John Stone as maybe not being physical enough. Don't know if that's me thinking it's because you're a defender. I think you should have something about you, and a little bit more about you in terms of a physicality that can. And I know he is quite silky looking, and he likes to play football. But I want him to be a bit more physical and a bit more I can play, but by the way, if you give me a little bit, I'm going to give you it back. And I don't see that in John Stones. And I think that's what I want to see from him. And I don't know why, but I want him to do really well. I genuinely do. Not because you like City or whatever, but it's just one of the players that I've taken quite an affection to. And I hope he genuinely does really well, because I think he's got too much stick for a period in his life where he got injured, his form wasn't brilliant, and he's playing for a manager that expects such high performances. And I think he's maybe now just getting to realise that position, because he's still only, I'm going to say 24, 25.
Yeah,
Can't be any more than that, Will.
Yeah. Do you know what? So, I'll go one further than that, right, with John Stones. Being a City fan, I feel like I've got a bit more of a license to criticise him. And I love him now, and I think he's been great. But I think at times he has deserved that criticism. He's just turned, he's 27 this year in May. So he's around that time. Okay. As a 26-year-old, he should be settling, shouldn't he? You're coming into your peak. But I don't know what's happened with him. I don't know what he's worked on over the last few months and who's worked with him and so on. And fair play to, sit on the sidelines for that long and just look like you had no future there, and to now being undroppable. And the big question, Al, is if you're Emerick Laporte and you're sat on the sidelines, you're thinking, how the hell do I get back in this team where I look like I was the Van Dijk here not long ago?
Absolutely. That's a great shout as well, by the way, because that's exactly what he'll be thinking about. Like, I'm coming here, I have no problem walking into this football team. And the fact that you've just said John Stones hung about, I think he's hung about because, I don't think a lot of people were really interested in taking him. And I think at times for John, the pennies had to drop about, it's not as easy football as he thinks it is, as in he almost thought, I can do this is easy. And then make a mistake and take criticism. The footballers don't like getting criticised, even if they think they're right. And maybe it's taken a time till he's 26, 27, because he was such a... high expectations were expected of John Stones, and he maybe didn't get there quick enough. And all of a sudden now you're like, there's a strong football player. And maybe when I talk about the physicality, maybe he's taken his body and his whole, building up of his frame to get into what we expected. And maybe when he was younger, it was there, but it wasn't there in a physical type, and also not in a mental state to think, I'm better than I am. Whereas now he's proving to us, rather, certainly with his performances at the moment under Pep Guardiola, that he's exactly what we thought he is. He is genuinely a proper defender now.
And do you know what? We're so bad in this country, aren't we, Al, for putting the microscope on players as well when so much is expected of them. And, there are other players who would never get criticised as much. And Jordan Pickford comes into that argument as well. John Stones has certainly suffered from that. Look, he's made mistakes. He's made mistakes not just at City level, but also for England as well. And when you're playing at that sort of stage with everyone watching you, it's a huge mental challenge to be like, I cannot make a mistake here. I haven't got the license or the room or the freedom to make a mistake, because I know that I'm going to be absolutely clattered for it if I do.
So is he watching Reuben Dias then? Reuben Dias doesn't take a lot of chances. And all of a sudden he's played next to him and he's like, oh, I didn't think he was going to do that. I thought he was going to drag it back with a Cruyff turn, put it through the winger's legs and caress one up the line.
Yeah.
At times you'll be able to get away with that, but there's not many times you can do that. And just maybe being alongside Reuben Dias, although he is only 23 years old, is kind of just, I don't know, don't make mistakes. He has the opportunity to be first on the team sheet for England, John Stones. That's how good I think he is. I might be wrong, but that's how good I think he is.
That's a great shout. I haven't thought of that also. That he's playing alongside Diaz and he's watching Diaz do things very simply. And he's thinking, this guy starts every game. He's not doing anything that I can. He's not that I can't. He's not more talented than me, because he's not, is he? With his feet, with his ball at his feet. So he's just thought, I'm going to simplify my game, and then there we go. It's worked for him. It's clicked for him, and actually, I think everyone's happy for him, because we know how talented. Certainly, if you're an England fan, you would want John Stones to be at the top of his game.
Yeah,
look, right. Want to talk to you about Frank Lampard. I love Frank Lampard. I really do. He's one of those. We always say, if you could have a drink with a manager, who would it be? He'd be right up there for me. But you can't get away from some of the scary facts, right? And since Roman Abramovich bought Chelsea in 2003, they've had 12 managers out, and he is rock bottom in terms of points per game, which I just found astonishing, given that he'd had such a good finish to last season. And I know they were always around second, third, fourth last season, but to get them into the Champions League spots, get them over the line, he's bottom of that list in points per game, beneath Villas-Boas, beneath Scolari, and managers that you look back and think, oh, he did not have a good time at Chelsea, even Benitez to a certain degree as well. And that is very, very worrying for Frank. He knows the rules, Al. He knows how Chelsea work. He knows how Roman Abramovich works. He may get a bit more license because, obviously, he's a Chelsea hero. You can't just go around sacking Chelsea heroes, or can you if you're Abramovich? I don't know if he cares about that. What do you think in terms of his future there? And look, we've got to be realistic about this. 2-3 wins in the Premier League, you're back in the title race. It's as tight, as condensed as that.
I think that's very true, because you can see Manchester United are on a nice little run just now, and all of a sudden, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who was favourite to be sacked for about, 6 months. I don't know. Pick a length of time. Right, okay, let's get back to Frank. This is a serious point. First and foremost, I don't think Chelsea should sack Frank Lampard. The mounting problem is, and I didn't realise that about the points per game, and obviously that's not good when you look at that kind of table like that, and under 40 games they'll get X amount of points, and we should get more than that. As long as Abramovich doesn't see that, it should be all right. Will, but on the serious side of things, they gave Frank the job originally, and he did well, gets him into the Champions League, remember, which is a huge plus, albeit that's been a bit of a rocky one for them as well. They gave him 200 million to spend, 200 million pounds. That's a lot of money to kind of to change Chelsea, not to change them, but to bring, when players are leaving, to bring players in that A, are better, and B, certainly better quality. And I think he's done both of them. To ask everything to fall into place so quickly is maybe, again, where maybe nowadays we want things that way. We want it right away, and because they're 80 million pounds, they should be fantastic. Unfortunately, that doesn't go with football very often. But I just cannot have Abramovich turning to Frank and saying, "Nah, I'm sorry, you've had a year and a half on the job. After spending 200 million, you're going to go." I just don't see it. I think they'll let him go through this. You never know; they might even spend more money. He's got some good young players at Chelsea, by the way, some really good young players.
Yeah.
He's addressed the goalkeeping situation, where I think he's gone to Abramovich and said, this is not working for Arrizabalaga. We need something else. He brought in Mendy. And I just don't see him being sacked. And I think, being the Chelsea legend, which is exactly what you said about him, I think we'll buy him a little bit of time. But, and this is a but, Will, and a half, he has to start for Chelsea looking as though they're a top 4 team. Not looking as though they're going to win it, if you know what I mean, but floating around 6th and 7th and losing 2 games and only winning 1, and then going in 3-game win, and then you lose a couple. That's not what Chelsea want. They want to be doing what Liverpool and Man City and what Manchester United are doing just now, which is looking as though we might lose a game, but we look in the majority of times that we're going to turn teams over. And Chelsea don't look like that just now. That's a problem.
And Al, Roman Abramovich, to me, and I don't know the man at all, but no one really gets near him to get to know him. He doesn't seem the kind of person to take sentiment and emotion into making a decision. Okay. And I say this, so here's an example. I'm a loser. I read Ancelotti's book, right? And there is a section in Carlo Ancelotti's book where he talks about just winning the League and Cup double with Chelsea. Remember it? 2010, yeah?
Yeah, I remember.
The Premier League title. So he goes away that summer, has a little chill time, and then thinks, I've got to get my recruitment right, and here we go. Thinking that he's going to be at Stamford Bridge for a few years. He's just, come in first season and won the League and Cup double. First game of the next Premier League season, they absolutely wallop West Brom by 6-0. Didier Drogba scores a hat-trick at the Bridge. They're top of the table after one game. He gets a text from Roman Abramovich after the game. I want to see you in my apartment tonight. We need to have a chat. He's thinking he's going there for a big party, and this is the future. You're going to, we want to give you a pay rise. And he gets an absolute rollicking about the style of play. He's just walloped West Brom 6-0, just coming off the back of winning the Premier League. And look, that's my point. And we've seen this with Jose Mourinho as well, at times. And I know it got bleak for Jose towards the end. But if he's going to make a decision like that when the team are flying, does Frank have to be a little bit worried, or more worried than he perhaps would be with a different owner?
Well, I'm already going into my Betfair account to have as much money as I can on Frank to be the next manager to get sacked. Because that kind of sentiment from the owner of the club, having just won League and Cup double and come out the first day of the season winning 6-0, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm thinking that the sentiment side of things, I'm a dreamer, and Frank is sitting in a seat that he doesn't care who's sitting in the seat as long as you're doing what I want you to do and I've given you the money to spend because it's my money, then there isn't a future for Frank Lampard at Chelsea. But on the terms of how they're playing now, what's expected of them. And remember, that's something you and I speak about quite a lot.
Yeah.
When you, even at the start of the season, expectancy. What's your expectancy? You know, let's say Southampton. I don't know. What are Southampton expected to do this season? I think I said, I'm going to go 8th, 9th or 10th. Right? Chelsea, what's expected?
Al, you spend £222 million. You got to compete for the title. We said that at the beginning of the group chat, didn't we? At the beginning of the season. And the minimum requirement is top 4. But when you've already got top 4 and you add £222 million worth of players, you've got to go for the title. Frank knows that. He knows he's not an idiot. He knows the rules, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, absolutely. And that'll be the thing that's really bumming him up just now, because he won't be happy with the way they're playing and, you know, conceding the goals that they did against City the other day there. What was it, 3-1? They got one back.
Yeah.
That's just not good enough for the money they're spending. Whether you think he needs time in the job and players have to settle down and get, you know, they're in. I genuinely think he'll be given this season. But I think a minimum is the top 4, even with the teams round about them. I still think Abramovich, if he has any sentiment in there, okay, we're not going to win it, but we're going to at least finish top 4. But my point was really at the beginning, Will, that I don't even see them as a top 4 finish at the moment. They're not playing like a top 4 team. They're not dominating games like a top 4 team. Yeah. But, you know, they're not going to go down and thinking Chelsea will get back. You know, I don't watch them thinking like that. You know, it's not a fragility in the team. It's just like, I don't know, do you create enough chances? I suppose they do, but do you take them? No. You know, you're now thinking maybe Giroud wants to leave now. I noticed in the news this week as well, so he might be going elsewhere, etc. And he's been such a big player for them, etc., etc. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong at Chelsea, but in terms of results, how many times do we say, right, it's a results-driven business. You spend 200 odd million, and I would imagine he's probably asked for maybe more money in January. That'll be interesting to see if he gets any more money. Will they bring someone else in? You know, does the likes of Gilmore, etc., and Mount all of a sudden, you know, high expectations of some of the young players? Is it Reece James? Not Reece James.
James,
I think they're right. Reece James. Some young players. You know, maybe Frank's like, I know you're good, but you're not good enough to put us in that top 4 yet. That'll be really interesting for me over the next couple of weeks. And
do you know what? You only have to put Lampard out into Twitter and just to read, and it's not just a few 100 people, it's thousands and thousands. And look, at first I looked down through it, and I just, some of them you can just disregard in 2 minutes. Yeah. But you're looking at a lot of them, right? And they're saying that he's tactically inept, and, you know, why are you playing Mason Mount and why are you doing this? And then a lot of them are kind of, you know, Chelsea fans from abroad and so on. And I was scrolling down, and I found Chelsea season ticket holders who had their seat number and stuff that are put on there. Chelsea season ticket holder for 20 years saying it's time for Lampard to go now. Tactically inept. I mean, I feel sorry for him in the sense that we both thought that Werner and Havertz would take to the Premier League like a duck to water, and they haven't. And in my eyes, they've kind of let him down a little bit because they've not been putting in the performances that for the kind of players that they are, and they were only 6 months ago in Germany for Leverkusen, for Leipzig. But to call tactically inept, Frank tactically inept, that for me is strong. We weren't saying that, were we, at the back end of last season when he pulled them into the Champions League? No, exactly. Neither were any of the Twitter followers either on Frank. Listen, would you say Guardiola's been tactically inept at times? You can certainly question some of his team that expect the 11 starters. Klopp, the same. I mean, you can point the finger at anybody. I don't care what manager you are. If you don't pick an 11 players that some of the fans think you should be picking, you'll always be given it if you lose the game. Well, that was tactically inept. Yeah. I mean, you know what I mean by that? I mean, I think it's an easy throwaway line because Frank hasn't, as of yet, been at the top as a manager for 10 years, which also, incidentally, makes you not necessarily tactically, you know, like inept, but the same reason that everybody now, listen, how many managers have we got in this country? We're all managers now. You know, even if you haven't played the game, you played the game. Everybody's a manager. On Twitter, you're a manager. On Instagram, we're all managers. There's only one person can make the decision, and that's Frank Lampard. And hopefully, the decision from up above will keep him in the job, and he will see the job through and make Chelsea better. To incidentally, what's all the Chelsea fans want them to be better? Naturally, so does Frank. Will they be given the opportunity with the money he spent?
They need to get results, Will. They need to get positive results.
Here you go on Chelsea. I'll leave you with this one, right? Ancelotti,
Yeah.
just fast forwarding from that season. So the first day of the new season, he won 6-0 against West Brom. Yeah, was called into Abramovich's apartment, done like the style of play. Went through the season, okay? Last game, 22nd of May. They lost to Everton, which is obviously where Ancelotti is now, last game of the season. He was sacked, right, just after the last game of the season. Where did Chelsea finish when they sacked Ancelotti?
I think I was at the game, by the way. I think it was a game at Goodison. I think I did that game.
I think so, yeah.
I genuinely think I did the game. They finished 7th.
They finished 2nd, and he got sacked. So if that's an insight into Roman Abramovich's thinking, then who knows what the next few months holds. But I think we both agree. We like to think that Lampard's got a bit more of a license. Go on, Al, quickly.
No, I was only going to say, of all the manager seats you would want to take, maybe the Chelsea one, even Frank might have thought, I know what happens at that club, but it's me. I should be okay. All the best, Frank.
Yeah, but we keep saying it, but he has been in that dressing room. He's seen how the owner acts and will know that,
Absolutely.
It could be him at any single moment. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, another manager that we've talked about, who has 1 minute looked like he's about to be sacked and all the fans have turned on him. The next minute, Ole's at the wheel and, he's going on these crazy long runs without a defeat. And they're right in the mix, after Liverpool's defeat at Southampton. United have the opportunity after the FA Cup to go top of the table outright on the same points. And who would have thought, there's not in a million years, if I'd said this to you 6-7 weeks ago, Al, that United could be top on merit and the way that they've been playing and how Solskjaer's turned the corner.
No chance. I would have said absolutely no chance. Genuinely, no chance. Albeit there's some very, very good football players at Manchester United. I mean, I live in the Northwest. All my mates are big. I don't mean Man United fans. And by the way, see the Man United fans are giving me stick on Twitter, by the way. There's a few people up here giving it, we'll find out who they are, big man. Don't worry. Because I'm talking about fans that go to away games, all the away games. In fact, was it they ended up in Linz for the game when they were playing somewhere, I can't remember. And I went, you went where? They went, yeah. I'm talking Man United fans. Yeah. And even they're like that. Wait, what, really? And of course, my phone's going crazy. They're giving it, Ollie's at the wheel now and all that, etc. But a couple of results bad, and they're like, nah, they are so like half cup full. And it's a little bit like that with Manchester United, Yeah.
Is that sustainable? And another thing I want to ask you about Manchester United, because I know we talked about it last week as well, and we will keep doing because they're pulling it in the performances.
Absolutely.
Fernandes has been outstanding. I noticed that he's brought Darren Fletcher onto his coaching team as well. He's already got Michael Carrick there, so he's got his trusted lieutenants around him. And interestingly, in that midfield areas as well, they've really worked on that. We've talked about Fred, we've talked about McTominay. We can talk till the cows come home about Bruno Fernandes, but with Carrick and Fletcher there as well, that's a solid coaching team. And that seems to me where they've had the big improvements. Of course, you can mention Maguire, you can mention De Gea, even sort of, going back to what it was under Sir Alex Ferguson.
Yeah, I'm going to skip midfield because without Bruno Fernandes, I don't see them being in that position. And I'm going to skip midfield because they have good players in the middle of the park, but getting the chemistry right of who he wants to play together at the same time has been a problem. I'm going to go defensively. I think defensively they've been brilliant. You know me, I was like having a go at everybody and a granny who was on TV giving it, Maguire needs a rest, and Man United. And I'm like, seriously? They need to get in the training park. They need to work in this, and they need to be a team. They need to come out together, back together. They need to smell danger together. They need to get closer together if they want to compact it and get the full-backs in and make sure they don't get done too easy, because that was where Man United's problem was. That is where I think they've worked. Genuinely, Will. Genuinely, I think they've worked really hard at that. And I think it's helped De Gea as well. His performance has been better. He's not having to save 7, 8, 9, 10 shots a game. It might only be 2 or 3 now. And that comes from a solid back four, or depending whatever way Solskjaer wants to play. Forward line, just do your thing. Apart from Martial, who I still think is a lucky boy to be at Manchester United, everybody else merits their place. The midfield I'm happy with. They look as though they've got it going. Pogba's come in, and to be fair to Pogba, although I wasn't happy that he managed to get a penalty against my old team, when he's been coming and he's been asked to play, I think he's kind of downed the ego a little bit and realised that Fernandes is the man. It's not Pogba anymore. And I don't think he's looked to be, I'm the man, flicking and little flickies around the corner and all that. I think he's doing a better job, and the job that we knew Paul Pogba could probably do. But defensively, for me, that's where Man United have got better, and they've looked absolutely rock solid. And if they can keep it like that, hey, they are absolutely in the mix.
And credit to Harry Maguire, because he's come in for a lot of stick and obviously didn't have the summer that he would have wanted, off the field. And we talk about Ruben Dias being a £61.5 million defender. Harry Maguire didn't look like a £15 million defender at some stage this season. You think back also to, it wasn't long ago, Al, when they got absolutely walloped by Tottenham, 6-1 at Old Trafford. So to suddenly now look like the player that they hoped he would be, he is looking more like an £80 million defender as the weeks go on.
Yeah, absolutely is. And I think a lot of Man United fans will be like, well, we didn't see this even like 6 months ago. But then again, he was going through a little time. It was difficult for him privately, and even trying to get a partnership to play with him and make sure the fullbacks were all on the right page. It all comes. Listen, if you're all doing your individual jobs properly, then it should help. But you still need to play as a team. You can't just give it, well, I played well today. And that's what it looked like for Manchester United. Well, I played well today. We got beat 2-0. You can't have that attitude. Yeah. If you come off the pitch and you get beat 2-0, whether you think you played well, you come off as a losing team. You don't come off as a losing player. And I think that's where Solskjaer's had to work really, really hard and say, guys, I know you're at Man United. I know you're making £1 billion a week. And I know all the fans love you. But there's only one way you're going to be remembered at this football club in a positive way. If they're doing what we're doing right now. And that's what they're doing. And I think that's where Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has not been given any credit for yet, Will. Genuinely. I still think he's seen as, you're a lucky boy to have the Man United job. But in fact, he works really hard at his job, really hard at his craft. And he can, phone, Sir Alex, etc., and get a little bit. But he's still got to work with those players and get them to be on the page that he wants them to do. Well, there's no way they've gone on the run over the last 10 and 11 games that they haven't. They're going to get beat. The biggest of the 6 months it's happened, and you're right, they got some battlings on the way, and Man United will still lose a game. The game in Leipzig is one where they'll be kicking themselves, and they're not in the Champions League. Apart from that, hey, there's been downs, but there's been more ups for Manchester United, and that's why the place is on a high just now. Sheffield
United, Al. Sheffield United, and I feel so sorry for them. I know. We were all so impressed with what Chris Wilder did last season, and I'm amazed. I mean, I would not in a million years have them where they are after 17 games, 2 points, rock bottom of the table, the longest run without a victory since the start of a Premier League season. They beat QPR's record from 2012, 2013. I was at the game against Crystal Palace where the body language, they were just completely down. I know Wilder was fuming at Eze's goal, which was terrific, wasn't it? An absolutely incredible goal. Came in like the 51st minute, 6 minutes, and they only put 5 minutes on the board. But, they were soundly beaten at the end. In terms of Derby County's record, 11 points, right? That was back in 2007, 2008, the lowest Premier League points tally for a season. Even they had beaten Newcastle by this stage. Are we looking around that figure? Do you reckon they could even surpass that record, Sheffield United?
I hope they do. And they get some kind of run going. I said, what did I say? 9th, 10th, 11th, I said. So I'm big time wrong with that. And I had to obviously say, and I got a bit of stick for it on Twitter as well, saying, look, you're down already, so just try and get as many points as you can, and we'll deal with the circumstances for when we get to the Championship, because that's where they're going to play next year. Answer the question, Al. Can they get to 11 points? So they need 9, they need 10 to pass it. Yeah, they'll get 3 wins out of how many? 17 to go, 17? Maybe 18 games to go or something.
Well, let me give you this one, right? So we'll gloss past the FA Cup because they've got Bristol Rovers in the FA Cup, and who knows, that's an opportunity really to get a win and to get some momentum. But then after that, a winnable game. They will be looking at this. They'll be thinking, right, New Year, here we go, 12th of January, at home to Newcastle, right? There's no reason why they can't have a proper crack at that game. Because look at the games that come after that. After Newcastle at home, they got Spurs at Bramall Lane. They then go to Old Trafford, and then they go to the Etihad. That's their next 3 after Newcastle.
Yeah, that's tough. But having said that, Will, the biggest problem is putting the ball in the back of the net. They don't have anybody that does it with any regularity. Now, if they had someone that was doing that at the moment, and Wilder had managed to bring in the summer a couple of strikers that could help, McBurney and Sharp, etc., 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 you'd have thought they'll beat Arsenal, and by the way, they might just get a result against Spurs. Do you know what I mean? As in, can we put the ball in the back of the net? They've created a few chances. I don't see them scoring. I just don't see them scoring on apart from the fact they won't score enough goals to win the games that they've already played in. That's obviously naturally hello. But I mean, in terms of going forward, if they're going to win any of the games, and I'm saying that I think they will get past 11 points, they're going to have to nick some games 1-0, 2-1s, you know, because scoring goals has not been the best. And unfortunately, as rock solid as they were with Dean Henderson in goal, of course, and that position's changed for them as well, they've got to make sure that they keep clean sheets. You said you were at the Palace game, and I only saw the game on TV, Will, so I wasn't particularly aware of body language and stuff, which is always a good thing to go to the game and see how the players are. You know, it's almost like an effort that they're giving when the body language, when you're watching the game, can't you? And if that goes, then obviously Chris is sort of destined to, right, you know, try and pin to the players. Do you want to be known as Derby County? Whoever he speaks about gets 11 points. I don't know. There's your incentive right there. That's your incentive. You have till the end of the season, when it looks as though we're going to go down, boys, so you won't be a Premier Division player. So you can't go home with your missus and your man, Dan, your granny and grandpa and say, I'm a professional, a Premier Division football player. You'll be a Championship player. If that happens, so be it. But do you want to know as someone who didn't get enough points in the Premier League and you take that record with you? That's what I'd be saying.
Yeah, and look, Chris Wilder was actually involved in the great escape in a Sheffield United team, wasn't he? I think it was like 1992 when they looked dead and
ages ago.
To pull it around. They're not getting battered in a lot of games. They've only lost 7 games by a single goal margin, 1-0, which, you know, they're not getting the floor wiped with them, which has got to be something that they can cling on to in this new year. I just wonder as well, they played Antoine Hackford, who's a 16-year-old. He was 16 years, 288 days, came on at Selhurst Park. And I know they've had a big sort of COVID outbreak and they've got players missing. Is that a statement to Prince Abdullah and the board going, look, give me some money here, January, and we can actually have a pop at this? You reckon?
Give me money, give me money. There's no way you play a 16-year-old when you've got some of the other players on the bench or in the squad by not saying to upstairs without actually saying. And by the way, don't be kidding that Chris Wilder is a shrinking violet that he hasn't actually said to Abdullah, by the way, you need to give me some money here. We need to strengthen the squad, even if we're going to have any kind of goal. But by the way, are you going to tell me that squad right now will be in first place or second place in the Championship next year? That's a tight one. It's all right getting beat 1-0 and thinking, well, if we had a couple of players who could maybe sneak it 1-1 or maybe even win the game 2-1 that they did last year. But if he doesn't strengthen that squad in that forward area, then A, they're not going to get 11 points, and B, they're going to struggle in the Championship next year. And maybe his best chance for coming straight back up, Will, is as a Premier Division team that they are right now, try and use that as the carrot to say, okay, you know, we want you to come to the club. We've got bigger, you know, the bigger picture is we may go down. If you come to the club, we just might not. And if we do, with you at the club, we'll come straight back up and you'll be a Premier Division football player again. It's a really difficult situation. It's taken everybody by surprise, I think, genuinely. Certainly taken me by surprise. I didn't see it. But I've watched a couple of the games, and unfortunately, Chris knows this. A, creating chances, they do. Putting the ball in the back of the net, they haven't.
Right, your Premier League title pick this season. I know you had your shot at it in September when the season was getting underway, and you know, looking at it now, Liverpool top of the table as things stand. Obviously, they lost against Southampton, so they're on 33 points. Manchester United with the game in hand on 33 points, having played just 16. Then Leicester, Tottenham making up the top 4. City currently in 5th. McInally's crystal ball come May. Who's going to be lifting that trophy?
Oh, well, I'm still going to go with Liverpool. I think Liverpool are going through a period of time at the moment that nothing ever seems to be going right for them. They can still certainly score goals, but defensively, naturally, things are so difficult for Liverpool at the moment that, you know, it's a problem, and that's shown in the results. United, I wonder whether United can stay the course. I wonder whether if Rashford gets injured and Bruno Fernandes gets injured and one of the back four gets injured, or 5 or 6 out of the per many 4 out of them, if United could stay, and I don't think they could. Liverpool are already in that position with the injury situation, which will get better, Will. And I still think we'll get the January window that Klopp will want to bring a couple of players in. I think Wijnaldum, will be leaving, so there's no question he's going to be bringing players in, including Thiago, of course, coming back into the Liverpool team in the middle of the park, which will help.
Basuma,
Chelsea,
by the way, is one being mentioned. Yves Basuma.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I think there'll certainly be players that they'll be thinking about bringing in Liverpool. Spurs, no. Chelsea, no. City, I still think it's between Liverpool and City. And you've just seen with the result against Chelsea the other week there, that City might be getting in the groove. They've gone through their little period and are coming out the other end. Man United were in that period and they're in a great period at the moment, whereas Liverpool were going good at the beginning and then have hit that little bump in the road at the moment in time. Over the piece, I'm still going to say Liverpool are Premier League title favourites for me. And I still think it's the City that will finish second. The rest will be scrapping for the other 2 places for the top 4.
Well, look, I'll tell you right now, right? Okay, it's Wednesday afternoon. We're doing this before the Manchester derby. Manchester City are going to go to Old Trafford and get themselves into the final in April in Wembley. That's going to happen. I've already just rewound. I'm looking forward to the next day watching this clip. Okay, and Manchester City...
My Man United mates will be happy with you saying that.
City have played 15 games, right? So they've got 2 games in hand on Liverpool, on Leicester, a game in hand on City, a game in hand on Tottenham as well. I've got a feeling, especially having watched that Chelsea game, as long as that's not a flash in the pan, City is starting to click. They're getting the momentum. Aguero is getting towards full fitness as well. That's been huge. Let's not forget, Sergio Aguero has not been starting games this season, and they're still managing to be in the mix. And of course, that's because Liverpool haven't been as good as they were last season in terms of them being closer to the top City. But you look at their games, they've got some winnable games over their next 4 matches. I know they've got the likes of West Brom, they've got Palace, they've got a game against Villa, Sheffield United to come as well. I have got a feeling that City are going to be top by the key stage when we're entering March and people can start to see the end. They can start to see those last 7-8 weeks and the light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm going for blue ribbons on the Premier League medals and trophy.
Oh, hang on a minute. So do you not think Aguero... So what you're saying is Aguero's getting back, he'll play every game before the end of the season? No. To have Aguero in the mix and to be able to even
bring him off the bench, which we haven't even been able to do that.
I still think he wants to buy somebody in January, Pep Guardiola, up top. I think he missed an opportunity in the summer. He should have done it. Having said that, he's probably not done it thinking that he had enough and Aguero wouldn't have picked up the injuries he had. Okay, that's something else. We've already spoken about Stones and Diaz. They get injured. Okay, you've got Aymeric Laporte coming in, and then it's a bit of a jumble for you. Listen, it's easy saying, we had injuries so we can't win it. Football's like that. You need, hopefully, as a manager, you've got to pick your best squad who are all super fit, and that's not very many times in the season you can do that. You're going for City, I'm going for Liverpool. United fans will think they can do it. Tottenham think it's their year, etc., etc. But I've already said, I do think Man City will push Liverpool right to the end. I think when we come out at the death, I think Liverpool, it's going to be tight this year. And I think even in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't see it being a 17 or 13 point gap, Will. I think there'll be, teams in and around 9 points, 7 points, 8 points to the top. It'll be a good run-in. Looking forward to it, actually.
Oh, mate, your title winners could be winning it with something like 75, 80 points this season, couldn't they?
Yeah. I was actually going to say, I don't see Andy shooting 91, 92 this season. I think if you get 80, 84, 85, 86, I think you're champions. And that's obviously been different considering, I don't know, what did City get? 101 and Liverpool ended 99 or 98 or whatever it was that they landed on last year. But it will be as competitive a year for the title, I think, that we've seen for ages. And it's for the simple reason that injuries, the state of the world, this COVID situation that football teams are having to deal with at the moment in terms of picking players, who's available, etc., etc., it's making things a lot more level than what we ever expected.
Those Celtic fans who watch us will be just wishing that the Scottish Premiership title race was as close as the Premier League title race is. Because after Rangers win in the Old Firm, 19 points clear at the top of the Scottish Premiership. Celtic, of course, have still got those 3 games in hand, but it's about being able to win those games in hand, which, isn't a guarantee if you're a Celtic supporter, is it, right now?
No.
They've won 28 of their 33 games this season, Rangers, in all competitions. That's astonishing. 28 wins out of 33 games. And just the one defeat in all comps against St Mirren, which came in the League Cup, not even in the league.
Yeah.
4 draws in the mix. Steven Gerrard really is taking them around that corner, which they've been trying to turn for a long, long time. I mean, it'll be cult hero status, won't it, if he's the one to get them over the line and to stop Celtic getting the record?
I still get reminded of me winning the league at Celtic by fans, and that's what, 30 years, 32, 33 years ago, for God's sake. Yeah, 100 years ago. Listen, we've spoken about this before, and I have spoken so positively about Steven Gerrard. I know Steven relatively well. I mean, probably when he's going to Portugal and we were golfing and we bump into each other, etc., etc.
It wouldn't be one of those sort of Alan Partridge moments where you're like, Dan.
Yeah.
He can't hear me. Steven.
No, to be fair, when he was shouting my name, I was like, I'll get with you in a minute, Steve. What he's done at Rangers has been absolutely brilliant. And funnily enough, I didn't realise we were going to talk about this today, Will. I was speaking about Steven Gerrard the other day, and somebody said to me, next England manager. I was like,
I said that to you before the season, yeah?
Not yet. Yeah, I think you did as well. Somebody just said the other day, and I was like, really? And I'm thinking, well, if he wins the league, and I think they probably will win the league, and Celtic, by the way, incidentally, Celtic in the first half were excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, McGregor makes some unbelievable saves and keeps them in the game. And obviously Celtic go down to 10 men, and it's a bit harder than Rangers, fall over the line at 1-0 and, everything's rosy, and Stephen's obviously delighted. But you've got to say the way he's approached the Rangers team and brought in players and changed a complete philosophy that looked as though wasn't at Rangers. He should be really commended. And I'd said to you ages ago, I think he's the next Liverpool manager after Klopp decides he's done. But somebody threw me the other day there, next England manager, and I thought, well, can he go straight to the England manager? I don't know about that.
I remember saying this to you, and we had this conversation maybe a couple of months ago, and I think he's got a great shout of being the next England manager after, obviously depending what happens at the Euros with Gareth Southgate and so on. But can you imagine, especially with that sort of like dearth of midfielders that we've got that are so young and exciting, and, from his sort of ilk, where he takes charge. I've got a feeling that he could be the England manager before he's the Liverpool manager, which when you think about that, it's a little bit crazy. But that's what I was
thinking about, funnily enough, actually.
Yeah, but there's now a big argument, isn't there? And we're seeing this with Frank Lampard, where you just think there's a lot of Liverpool fans who would probably like him to have another 10 years under his belt before coming to Anfield, and then just being an absolute force rather than coming now and risking and results not going right. And it's the same with Frank, isn't it? They love Frank, those Chelsea fans. They probably would have wanted him at a time where he was more experienced, but he's only had 2 years as a manager. Frank Lampard's only had the same. Yeah, why not give him?
Well, yeah. And then again, all the Rangers fans are saying, given it, well, we don't want him to leave Rangers. The job he's done here, surely he'll maybe stay for another season and try and win the league again, and maybe Rangers will come up with some funds and he can bring in even better quality players than they've got. Because Celtic will have to do that. Celtic will have to spend money in the summer, whether Neil Lennon's the manager or not, if they're going to try and compete to get the title back off of Rangers. But on the bigger picture, we're now saying, okay, he does brilliant at Rangers, has done brilliant at Rangers, looks as though they're going to win the title. Does he stay or does he go? In terms of, where does he go? Is the Liverpool job available? Or do they give him the England job right away? I mean, it's a wonderful position for Steven to be in. But and I was just thinking when you mentioned Frank Lampard there, Frank's had big money to spend in a league that's obviously naturally a lot stronger than the Scottish Premiership. But where he's taken Rangers from, which is not also Rans, but like not even thought of as if they can possibly compete with Celtic, who looked as though they were just going to go on and win the title for the next 3 or 4 years, has completely changed that football club. Now, if he can do the same with the next job wherever he goes, then I think you're talking inevitable England manager. An inevitability, because he just looks as though he's got that Midas touch, and that's what he's had since he's gone to Glasgow.
Okay, it's acca time, boys. Sam Rosbottom from Betfair is here. Alan, you can't pick games which are going to be postponed, and you can't keep picking games that we don't get the results right. But it's a new year, it's a new us. And 2021 is full of hopes and dreams. Okay, we're going to pick FA Cup games, Sam. Really excited. I always loved, even as a kid, the third round of the FA Cup. We're going to go for the 3 o'clock kickoffs on Saturday. And I'm going to start with a Leicester win at Stoke. And I know Stoke are going well in the Championship, but I just think everything that's going on at Leicester with the new training ground, they've got a decent-sized squad going really well in the Premier League. That's not going to be one where they're just like, we don't fancy the FA Cup. I think they'll put out a good team and go for it. Even if Iheanacho starts up top, you think they'd have enough. And then Swansea to beat Stevenage as well, Samuel.
Yeah, so you're siding with the punters there. Leicester really fancied their 4-5 to go to Stoke and win. Like you mentioned, Stoke are doing pretty well in the Championship. Likewise, Leicester doing well in the Premier League. And where, you might say, okay, Leicester might look at this and go, it's a chance for us to have a bit of a break or whatever, give some extra player, give some other players a bit of a chance. I think with everything that is going on at that club, silverware is really important. And the FA Cup is one of those trophies that's really seen as, a great piece of silverware to have on the mantle. So Leicester 4-5 to win, Stoke 18-5, the draw 27-10. Looking at the Swansea match, another team who are doing well in the Championship, currently second. This could be one of those where they potential banana skins. Stevenage have had a lot of issues. They're 5-1 to win at home. Stevenage, Swansea, big odds-on favourites at 1-2. The draw 18-5. But the quality that Swansea have got, you'd expect them to do the job.
So those are two bankers, Al. Over to you.
I really like them. I think the Leicester one's a great shout, by the way. They're a decent price as well, as Sam just said. I think even Brendan will be thinking out with the top four, which is obviously a big goal for them. I think the FA Cup, I think Sam's spot on. I think he'll play a good team. Anyway, you've done it again. It looks like you've picked a double. Right, listen. It's a new year, 2021, right?
Yeah.
Birmingham 0, Blackburn 2, and Brackley Dack scores a goal, so I'm going to go for Blackburn at home to Doncaster. Home banker. My next one is a little bit, I don't even know if Sam will let me take this. I'm going to go for QPR to beat Fulham, QPR at home, both in the FA Cup.
Yeah, looking at the let's start with that QPR 2-1 QPR to beat Premier League Fulham. The draw 12-5. Fulham favourites 11-8. Fulham clearly got their eye on survival this season, and anything else is a bonus. So I think QPR at home, wanting to get a scalp in the derby. 2-1, big price. But again, I can see where you're coming from there. Looking at the Blackburn fixture against Doncaster, Blackburn 4-6 favourites in this one. Great to see Dak on the score sheet after his injuries of late. The draw there 16-5 and Doncaster 15-4 to go over the Pennines and get a result.
Let us be blessed by the magic of the FA Cup. What a bunch of bankers.
Yeah, so just looking at that all together, QPR to win, Blackburn to win, Leicester to win and Swansea to win, coming out at 13.5 on the sportsbook.
This time next year, Rodney, I'm telling you. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about the next manager to face the sack in the Premier League. We wouldn't wish it on anyone. We've already seen one manager go this season. Sam Rosbottom from Betfair is here. Sam, what's that list looking like now? Who's creeping towards the top of it?
Yeah, this week's been really interesting, actually. We've seen quite a lot of action on the next Premier League manager to leave market on the sportsbook. And not good news for Frank Lampard. He touched 11-10 early this week to be the next manager to go, which is really significant given that he's looked pretty secure in that list for a number of months now. But yeah, this big move for Frank Lampard this week, touching 11-10. Chris Wilder, there was some rumours about him potentially leaving earlier in the week as well. He hit around 21-10 on the sportsbook, so it's really hotted up there. But Frank Lampard, the favourite to be the next manager to leave.
Can you see that, Al? When you look at Lampard, right? 2003, since Roman Abramovich bought the club, he has the lowest points per game out of all of those managers, 12 managers, including ones that you just think had such an awful time at the Bridge, like Scolari and Villas-Boas. You can't imagine that, given the season that he had last season, getting him in the Champions League. And I know it's not been brilliant, but you wouldn't think he'd be bottom of that list, would you? No,
and someone was reminding me the other day that although he was at Derby, and he did a good job at Derby, genuinely. I mean, he nearly got them in the Premiership. But he still probably, if another manager had done that at Derby, he's not going to bag himself the Chelsea job, is he? So the fact that he's got such a history with the Chelsea's obviously got him the job, and this is a big, big year for him in terms of you can't spend 200 million and not really hit the ground running, and that's what it's been like. But I don't know. Well, I can't see them getting rid of Frank Lampard. I genuinely can't. I mean, naturally, listen, should we be surprised in football? No. If I was taking a punt on somebody else, I don't know, next manager to leave his job, I can't help thinking maybe Big Sam. I don't think Roy Hodgson, unless he thinks he's had enough. I don't think Daishi with a takeover. And I'm still saying, and by the way, and although he's probably shorter in the long run, Chris Wilder, I don't see him leaving his job either. I think it's a really difficult market to predict. Having said that, when you say somebody's gone from 10s to 6s to 3s to 11 to 10, sometimes, you know, the bookies hardly get it wrong very often, do they?
It's interesting as well to look at the next permanent Chelsea manager market that we've also got on the sports book.
Yeah.
Thomas, the big news, obviously, Pochettino taking over at PSG. Thomas Tuchel's now available. He's the favourite to be the next manager at Stamford Bridge. He's 2-1 at the minute. Max Allegri has been out of a job for a while now. He's 3-1 second favourite, and Brendan Rodgers is in there at third favourite at 6-1.
Wow!
Do you know,
I saw Shevchenko's name mentioned in there as well. Sorry, Sam, did you see that Shevchenko's name was? I'm surely that to swap. Frank
Yeah.
Lives here. Still lives in London somewhere, I think.
I did see some funny tweets going around on Twitter about Shevchenko. Never mind replacing Frank Lampard. Can't he start up front instead, or something along those lines? But Shevchenko is in there. But you won't be surprised to hear that he is an outsider. He's 66-1. Andrei Shevchenko.
I know we're going to wrap this up, Will, but in my head. And although he has turned the fortunes round of Manchester United at the moment in time, I still see Solskjaer as one of the top guns in that market that might still lose his job, because you know what it's like at United. There's still people, although they're behind him at the moment, if they go 3 or 4 or 5 games and even don't get a good start in that Europa League, I still think he's hanging on to his job as of yet and needs to get to the end of the season and decide what he's doing with some of the squads. It's like I said, it's such a difficult market to predict, though.
You're only safe in that market for a couple of weeks. And it's a huge market, isn't it, Sam? People love a punt on the next manager to go.
Yeah, there's lots of changes. Like, you know, Al, you mentioned there, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's been favourite for a number of weeks. Earlier on in the season, it looked almost certain at one point. I think he touched odds on. When it was looking pretty bleak and they were knocked out of the Champions League. But then he goes and turns it around, and he's now 20-1 to be the next manager to leave. So, this market is very volatile. It swings depending on, what's going on at the time. And I think it all depends on the chairman, the chairman and the boards, if they can ride it out with managers and stuff like that. But, yeah, really interesting market.
And Frank is watching his back. Cheers, Sam. Al, really enjoyed that, mates. Thank you very much. I can see it's getting dark here. I haven't even got any lights. I'm 37 years old. It's my birthday today. I'm in a flat that's not even mine, and the lights don't work. So I'm sitting here in the dark talking to you. Look at that. That's what
Happy
I
birthday.
need.
Happy birthday, kid. Happy birthday.
I like that. So a lovely decanter and a bottle of red. We can only hope post-lockdown we can share one of those together, Al. Enjoyed it, mate. Speak to you next week.
Thanks, pal. Bye, everybody.